I'll never forget that sleepless night, the one that shattered my reality and also sparked a fire within me that I didn't know still burned. The phone buzzed unexpectedly in the silent dark of my studio apartment in Austin, Texas. I reached over groggily to check the notification, my heart thumping erratically, when a single subject line jolted me awake. Final notice, your inheritance. The message was terse, chilling, and signed by Elaine. My mind raced with disbelief. How could she, my wife, the one person I trusted beyond all reason, have the audacity to declare that my father's hard-earned legacy was no longer mine? The words leaped off the screen, igniting a tumult of betrayal and pain that I had never experienced before. And yet, buried within that shock was something else, a quiet determination whispering, "This isn't the end." I'm Jason, a 42-year-old tech innovator who has spent the last decade fighting against the current of doubt in Silicon Hills and beyond. I wasn't born with a silver spoon, but with a passion that was stirred by the legacy of my father, Raymond, and his lifelong belief that innovation could change lives. His modest inheritance had always been earmarked to fuel my startup dreams, to develop cutting-edge software that could redefine communication for people everywhere. I poured every ounce of my heart into that promise, leaving behind the conventional path for one paved by ideas and relentless ambition. Yet tonight, that promise had been callously stolen away. The details still echo in my mind. Elaine, my wife, had been on a retreat with her lover, a trip they both described as a soul-searching expedition into nature's embrace. I had trusted her implicitly. After all, love and sacrifice were the foundations of our marriage. But the evidence staring at me from that cold screen confirmed that her retreat was merely a ruse. Not only had she run off with a man I barely knew anything about, but she had also siphoned off every penny of my inheritance, money that was meant to realize a future we'd both dreamed about. The betrayal was not just a theft of funds. It was a betrayal of trust, dreams, and the future I had painstakingly built. I sank into the worn leather chair behind my cluttered desk, my eyes scanning the details of bank transfers and enigmatic emails that painted a damning portrait of deceit. Every number, every signature, every carefully worded line of legalese clashed with the soft echoes of memories of happier times. Late-night brainstorming sessions in our small, cramped office, when Elaine had been a supportive partner in all things life. I remembered how she had encouraged me, laughing with me as we celebrated tiny victories. That laughter now rang hollow in the dark. How could love turn so bitterly sour? As the overwhelming shock began to give way to a heavier, all-encompassing resolve, I noticed a subtle detail in one of the attachments, a watermarked image of our first prototype for the communication software my team and I had labored over. That prototype, which I lovingly dubbed the Beacon, had become a symbol of my father's prophetic words. In darkness, light finds a way. Now, the Beacon felt like both a cherished memory and a lifeline. I realized then that Elaine's betrayal was not the end of my journey. Instead, it sparked a radical shift, an awakening that I must reclaim not only what was stolen, but also the integrity of the dream my father had bequeathed to me. In the following hours, as dawn crept over the Austin skyline, I sat amidst scattered blueprints, prototype sketches, and empty coffee cups, a silent army of tokens chronicling months of tireless work. My mind oscillated between anger and reflection. I couldn't help but wonder, was this betrayal an act of calculated ambition on Elaine's part or a desperate attempt to seize an opportunity she believed was rightfully hers? The answer did little to stifle the sting, but it stirred an ember of defiance deep within me. I reached out to Marcus, one of the few steadfast allies I had in this brutal world of tech startups. Marcus was more than just a colleague. He had been a mentor through countless challenges, a voice of reason amid chaotic decisions. In the pre-dawn quiet of our favorite diner, his eyes conveyed both empathy and a quiet, unyielding determination. "Jason," he said, stirring his coffee with deliberate calmness, "this might be the worst blow of your life, but it could also be the catalyst for something even greater. His words resonated with a truth that I had long evaded. Sometimes, hitting rock bottom was exactly what was needed to rise higher than ever before. In that conversation, I began to see a glimmer of hope. If Elaine had been so strategic as to set this betrayal in motion during her retreat, perhaps she hadn't accounted for the resilience that lay dormant in me. I had built my life from scratch, piece by painstaking piece, and every setback had only hardened my resolve and sharpened my ideas. The vision for the beacon was still alive, pulsating quietly in the recesses of my mind. It was proof that every bit of passion and creativity I invested would not be snuffed out by greed or betrayal. I spent the rest of the morning combing through every legal document, every digital footprint Elaine had attempted to cover up. I began mapping out a strategy, a plan to reclaim not only my inheritance, but also the honor of the legacy my father had trusted me with. Each verified detail became a stepping stone, each piece of evidence a small victory. The bitter taste of betrayal was slowly being replaced with the rich flavor of resolve and strategic planning. I knew that the road ahead would be treacherous, filled with legal battles and public scandal. More than that, I would have to confront the person I once loved and the man I believed myself to be, head-on. Every flicker of doubt, every pang of loss, instead transformed into a drive. I would not let this be the final chapter of my story. As I dusted off old documents and reread my father's handwritten notes, I found solace and strength in his enduring optimism. When darkness surrounds you, let your inner light guide the way. His words seemed to murmur from beyond time. That inner light now burned brighter than ever. As I prepared to face another day, I realized that the betrayal was only half the battle. I had one more obstacle to overcome: the public fallout. In our tightly knit tech community, rumors spread like wildfire. And while some were quick to cast judgment on me, a few loyal supporters, friends who respected the integrity behind each line of code and every innovation, rallied quietly behind me. Their silent support lit the embers of a community spirit that I had long taken for granted. I vowed to rediscover that sense of unity and channel it into rebuilding not only my dream, but also my rightful place in this vibrant, competitive landscape. Yet, even as I began to see a path forward, a gnawing question remained. Would the evidence I was painstakingly gathering be enough to expose the manipulation, to force Elaine and her co-conspirators to face the consequences of their greed? The storm was gathering, and though I knew what I had to do, the uncertainty of what the next move would bring left me both anxious and strangely excited. I stood at the precipice of a reckoning, where loss and triumph danced precariously on the edge of every decision. As the sun rose over the bustling skyline of Austin, its rays illuminated not just the city waking up, but also the unwavering determination in my eyes. I wasn't merely a betrayed husband or a wronged entrepreneur. I was a fighter, and my next move would set off a chain of events that could very well change the trajectory of my life forever. But could I, standing alone in the aftermath of such deep betrayal, truly gather the strength to confront the storm ahead? And how would Elaine react once she realized that every step she took to secure her stolen inheritance had unwittingly set the stage for her own undoing? The answers shimmered on the horizon like distant lightning, and as I embraced the rising sun, I silently vowed that this was only the beginning. I woke that morning with the weight of betrayal still pressing on my chest, yet a fresh determination surged within me. The images of Elaine's smile, the one that once promised partnership and shared dreams, now haunted me like ghosts in a dark corridor. I knew I had to act quickly, for every moment of delay risked further erosion of the legacy my father had entrusted to me and my dream of launching the beacon. With trembling hands, I arranged my scattered evidence into neat piles, scanning through the digital remnants of what once was a promise of unwavering support. The bank statements, dripping with meticulous transfers to unknown accounts, and the cryptic emails echoing hints of covert transactions, all became the stepping stones upon which I vowed to reclaim everything lost. Desperation soon gave way to systematic resolve. I powered up my aging laptop, its screen glowing in the dim, early light of my modest Austin office. I began by consolidating every document that painted a damning picture of Elaine's deceit. I recalled Marcus's calm assurance from our pre-dawn meeting at the local diner, where the aroma of strong coffee mingled with the bitter taste of betrayal. His words, "This is the catalyst for your next chapter," echoed in my mind as I meticulously sorted the files into folders labeled betrayal, evidence, and financial irregularities. It was in that moment I understood that every piece of evidence was not just a memory of a broken bond, but ammunition forged in the fires of a renewed purpose. By midday, while the Austin sun streamed through my window in golden beams, I reached out to Olivia, a reputable lawyer known for defending innovators against corporate and personal injustices. Her sleek downtown office provided a welcome contrast to the painful clutter of my thoughts. As I explained in measured tones how Elaine had not only taken the funds, but had hidden them behind layers of offshore accounts, and how her lover, Brandon, appeared repeatedly in the transaction trails, Olivia's eyes narrowed with a mix of empathy and fierce determination. "Jason," she said, slowly leafing over the dossier I'd assembled, "what you're facing here is a well-orchestrated fraud, not merely a personal betrayal. We must act swiftly to freeze these assets and trace every drop of your inheritance." In that moment, her calm, decisive tone bolstered a strength in me I thought had been lost. Soon after leaving her office, I returned to my own and began scrutinizing the digital trails further. I discovered that aside from the obvious Cayman Islands account where damning funds had been funneled, Elaine had cleverly routed money through several intermediary accounts. Each transaction was executed at odd hours, almost as if desperate attempts were being made to hide the trail. My heart pounded as I logged every figure and timestamp into a detailed timeline. It wasn't just a simple mishap of a wayward spouse. This was cunning, calculated deceit. The digital footprints even hinted that Brandon wasn't a casual accomplice. He was actively involved, with several encrypted emails suggesting meetings and Plan Delta, a phrase that chilled me with the implication of a broader conspiracy. Determined to connect these dots, I arranged to meet Marcus once more at one of Austin's buzzing tech hubs, a modern space filled with glass walls, minimalist decor, and the constant hum of innovation. Over steaming cups of fresh brewed coffee, and amid the clatter of enthusiastic brainstorming sessions around us, Marcus's presence was a quiet reminder that I wasn't in this fight alone. "Jason," he said in a measured, thoughtful tone, "what you've uncovered is significant, but we must probe deeper. Elaine's activities around these offshore accounts aren't isolated incidents. There's a pattern here that suggests an elaborate scheme." His words layered new urgency onto my mission, spurring me to consider that the betrayal might extend beyond just personal greed. Energized by Marcus's insight, I decided that if legal and financial maneuvers would be my first line of defense, then technology would be my sword. I reached out to Sparrow, a prodigious hacker from South Austin whose skills in digital forensics were the stuff of local legend. Sparrow's reputation was built on silent nights filled with coding marathons and digital sleuthing, and though he was initially reluctant to get involved, my earnest plea and my story of lost legacy and honor finally broke his reserve. In a cramped, dimly lit basement filled with the steady glow of multiple monitors, Sparrow dove headlong into the encrypted layers of Elaine's communications. His nimble fingers danced across his keyboard as he unearthed a series of messages between Elaine and Brandon. The content was damning. They discussed discreet meetings, unconventional wire transfers, and obscured financial maneuvers that pointed to a secret Plan Delta. Each new piece of digital evidence felt like a blow against the myriad lies that had been spun, and with every decrypted message, my determination grew fiercer. Late in the afternoon, as I pored over the threads of tangled data and prepared a comprehensive timeline on a whiteboard in my office, I couldn't help but think of the countless evenings spent huddled over my father's handwritten notes. His words had always been a beacon. In every shadow, there's a spark of light waiting to be kindled. Those simple words, scrawled on yellowed paper, now anchored my resolve as I began making sense of the web of deceit Elaine had spun. I documented every suspicious transaction, every cryptic correspondence, ensuring nothing was left unrecorded. Every jot and scribble became a testament to a love betrayed and a legacy defiled, and a vow to expose the truth. With the evidence mounting and my heart slowly pumping renewed courage, I began planning my next major move. The annual Austin Tech Forum loomed on the horizon, a gathering where innovators and disruptors came together to celebrate progress. It was at this event that I envisioned unveiling the scandal, not just to reclaim my inheritance, but to stand up for every visionary who had been wronged by greed. I pictured the dramatic moment on stage, my voice steady as I recounted the treachery, and, in doing so, rallied the community around the principles of honesty, innovation, and resilience. Just as I felt ready to compile the final dossier for this public confrontation, my phone buzzed with a startling new notification. The message, bearing the subject "Critical Update. Your next step," came from an unknown sender. My pulse quickened as I read its contents. A short, cryptic verse accompanied by coordinates pinpointing a secluded area near the Nexus hub, the very incubator where the beacon had first been conceived. The message was ambiguous and laden with possibility. Was this a final attempt by Elaine to sidetrack my efforts, or a clandestine hint from someone who knew more about the larger conspiracy? The uncertainty of it all sent shivers down my spine. I sat alone in the silence of my office, the glow from my monitor casting long, wavering shadows on the walls as I pondered the implications. Every file I had unearthed, every conspiracy unraveled, now converged on this single, mystifying message. It was a fork in the road. Follow this new lead and risk venturing deeper into the labyrinth of Elaine's deceit, or play it safe and rely solely on the evidence already amassed. My thoughts churned with the possibilities, each as daunting as the next. Was this the breakthrough that would finally expose the full magnitude of her betrayal, or a step that might plunge me into even darker waters? I took a deep, steadying breath and closed my laptop. The battle was transforming from a personal quest for justice into a full-blown crusade for truth, one that could either vindicate my father's legacy or shatter my world completely. As I reached for my coat and prepared to step into the cool, hopeful Austin evening, another message arrived from Olivia. "Jason, I flagged something critical in the transaction logs. Meet me at my office in 30 minutes. Oh, my heart pounded anew. What would she uncover next? The answer, and what this new evidence might unleash, hung in the charged air of the city as I prepared for the next move in this dangerous game. Night had already swallowed Austin when Olivia's urgent call spurred me into action. I left my office with the cryptic coordinates burning in my mind and set my sights on the Nexus hub, a sprawling incubator that once pulsated with promise, but tonight exuded only mystery and danger. Every mile I covered along the city's neon-lit streets deepened my resolve. The thought of Elaine's meticulously orchestrated betrayal, now laced with hints of a grander conspiracy, drove me onward. I couldn't help but feel that the man I once trusted had now become the architect of his own ruin, and that every second lost meant the further erosion of my father's legacy and my dream, the beacon. Pulling into a nearly deserted lot behind the Nexus hub, I parked my car and surveyed the modern building before me. Its glass facade glittered under the stark hues of digital billboards and ambient streetlights. The stark contrast between innovation and secrecy was palpable. I slipped out and made my way to the side entrance, where the echoes of my footsteps mingled with the low hum of servers and midnight chatter from inside. Every step brought me closer to unraveling the tangled threads of Elaine's scheme, and perhaps closer to discovering that the betrayal went far beyond personal matters. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit by soft LED strips that traced abstract patterns on minimalist walls. I could almost sense the heartbeat of innovation pulsing through the corridors. The earlier message, a brief, verse-like note and a set of coordinates, had clearly been sent to lure me here. I recalled Olivia's voice describing a massive, scheduled transfer hidden among offshore accounts. Now, amidst the quiet hum of the incubator's machinery, everything threatened to collapse into a single, irreversible moment of reckoning. After drifting through a maze of corridors, I heard hushed voices emanating from a slightly ajar conference room door at the far end of the hall. I paused, pressed my back against the cool wall, and peered inside. There, a group of individuals huddled over sleek laptops and scattered documents, their conversation tense and urgent. One figure stood apart, a man with cold, calculating eyes and a confident air. The way he gestured animatedly sent a chill down my spine. I recognized him from Sparrow's decrypted messages. This was Brandon, the man whose involvement I had once assumed was peripheral. Observing him now in this clandestine environment confirmed a dreaded suspicion. Brandon was not merely a pawn, but a key conspirator in Plan Delta. Retreating into the shadows, I quickly texted Sparrow. Need update on Brandon's activity. Confirm his role. Within minutes, his terse reply flashed on my screen. Brandon is positioning himself to secure lucrative tech contracts. He's more integral to their plan than you think. Stay sharp. His words, laced with urgency, were like a spark to dry tinder. If Brandon was indeed orchestrating a corporate power play, then Elaine's betrayal was merely the opening salvo in a far broader assault on the independent innovators of our community. Determined to collect every scrap of evidence, I navigated a quiet side corridor that led to an old storage area. This forgotten space, once a makeshift workspace during my late-night coding sessions, now held the promise of crucial clues. As I rifled through boxes of outdated prototypes and discarded design sketches, my fingers grazed a small envelope wedged between stacks of printed invoices. The envelope bore a familiar stamp, the emblem of the beacon. My pulse quickened as I opened it delicately, revealing a trove of documents and a sealed USB drive. The papers detailed internal memos referencing Plan Delta, confidential contracts linking Elaine and Brandon to a shadowy investment firm, and even photographs of clandestine meetings in upscale boardrooms. One annotated passage jumped out. Initiate Phase 2 upon confirmation of funds transfer. It was unmistakable. Elaine had engineered a plan not only to steal my inheritance, but also to siphon it into a scheme designed to monopolize the tech industry and quash independent visionaries like myself. I stood there for what seemed like an eternity, absorbing the magnitude of this revelation. My father's gentle yet powerful words echoed. In every shadow, there's a spark of light waiting to be kindled. Now, that spark burned fiercely within me. With the documents and USB drive secured, it was painfully clear that my next step was to integrate this damning evidence into a broader strategy for the upcoming Austin Tech Forum, a public arena where innovation met accountability. I envisioned stepping onto that stage, not merely to reclaim what was stolen, but to rally the community against a tide of corporate treachery. Before I could fully process the envelope's contents, my phone vibrated again. Olivia's text flashed urgently. Jason, recheck the transaction logs. There's a massive transfer scheduled in under 24 hours. I need you to verify the source immediately. A cold knot formed in my stomach. This transfer wasn't just another financial maneuver. It was the final push to set Plan Delta into motion. I pulled up the digital logs on my phone, scrutinizing every entry. There, amidst routine records, was an account earmarked for an astronomical sum. This transfer was designed to provide frontline capital for a hostile takeover of key tech contracts. It was a calculated move in a corporate coup that threatened to silence innovators and consolidate power into the hands of Elaine, Brandon, and their enigmatic benefactors. I quickly dialed Marcus, my ever-reliable mentor whose measured advice had often steered me through turbulent times. His voice, calm yet resolute, provided a brief anchorage to my spiraling thoughts. Jason, you're on the brink of uncovering something monumental. But remember, knowledge is power only when wielded with care. Use this evidence, as the cornerstone of your counterattack. But be prepared. Exposure of such deep-rooted deceit will have far-reaching consequences. His words lingered as I stepped back into the cool embrace of the evening. With the envelope and its damning documents clutched in one hand and the weight of Olivia's warning in my mind, I turned and headed back toward my car. The hum of the city now blended with the internal rhythm of my racing heart, each beat reaffirming my commitment to confront this sprawling betrayal head-on. As I approached my car beneath a canopy of flickering streetlights, something in the dark caught my eye. A solitary figure emerged from the shadows near the entrance of the Nexus hub, a fleeting glimpse that made my breath catch. I couldn't be sure if it was Brandon or yet another conspirator sent to monitor my movements. The figure paused, as if contemplating whether to engage, then melted back into the night. My skin prickled with the unmistakable sensation of being watched. Had Elaine's web of deceit anticipated every move? Or was there an entirely new player lurking in the background? I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, the gravity of the situation crashing over me. The evidence I had gathered was damning enough to expose a conspiracy that threatened not just my future, but the very spirit of independent innovation. Every document, encrypted file, and covert photograph painted a picture of a betrayal that scaled far beyond personal animosity, a systematic plan to control the tech industry by any means necessary. Just then, my phone rang. The screen displayed an unknown number. Instinctively, I answered, my voice low and cautious. A distorted voice replied, "We see you're getting close, Jason. The game has only just begun." The line went dead before I could probe further, leaving me with a cold, lingering dread and a barrage of questions. Who was watching me? What did they plan to do if I continued down this path? And most importantly, was this the final warning before a larger, more dangerous confrontation? With a shiver running down my spine and the weight of the coming battle heavy on my shoulders, I started the engine and pulled away from the Nexus hub. The neon buzz of Austin's tech district blurred by as I drove with an urgency powered by equal parts desperation and defiance. The documents, the USB drive, Olivia's dire warning, and the mysterious call all converged into one resolute mission: to bring this sprawling network of deception into the light at the Austin Tech Forum, to reclaim my inheritance, and to honor the legacy of my father. Even as the cityscape receded in my rearview mirror, I couldn't shake the sensation of unseen eyes tracking every move. I was now at a crossroads where each decision carried monumental risks, risking further exposure to potentially dangerous adversaries or the opportunity to expose an empire built on lies and manipulation. Every detail, every decrypted message, and every whispered conversation was a piece of a puzzle that only revealed more of the grand picture. I pressed on, determined to meet Olivia at her office as scheduled, where we would assemble the final dossier against Elaine and Brandon. But just as the familiar outline of downtown Austin began to emerge at the horizon, a final message flashed on my screen. Be ready. The next move will redefine everything. In that charged silence, with my future and the integrity of my father's legacy hanging in the balance, I couldn't help but wonder, how deep did this conspiracy go? And were my allies enough to face the storm that was swiftly building? Just as I thought I had begun to stitch together the threads of a vast tapestry of betrayal, a sudden flash of movement in the darkness beside my car reminded me that the real confrontation was only beginning. The night swallowed me as I accelerated toward Olivia's office, every mile punctuated by the relentless question: what if this was just the opening act of a battle that would change everything? The next morning, I arrived at Olivia's sleek downtown office with a mix of grim determination and cautious hope. The sterile white walls and minimalist design did little to ease the tension churning inside me. Olivia's face, usually a calm mask of legal expertise, now bore lines of worry as she reviewed the latest developments. She wasted no time. "Jason, we have confirmation," she said, sliding a meticulously prepared file across the glass table. "The offshore accounts are being manipulated by a firm called Silvernova Capital, a name that, until now, had been a whisper in our circles. It appears they are funneling money from these transfers to secure undisclosed tech acquisitions, and Brandon's involvement is far more intricate than we suspected. Her words hit me like a freight train. Silvernova Capital wasn't just any investment firm. It was notorious for its aggressive, almost parasitic maneuvers in the tech sector, often absorbing promising startups to consolidate power. The revelation confirmed that Elaine's betrayal was not a personal vendetta alone. It was a calculated move to upend the balance of our entire industry. Olivia continued, her voice measured but urgent. We need to freeze these transactions immediately. I've already contacted the authorities, and with the evidence we have, we can challenge any attempt by Silvernova and their cohorts to seize these funds. Her message was clear. Every minute we hesitated risked another dollar slipping into their covert empire. Leaving her office, I knew that legal battles were only one front in this war. I quickly convened a meeting with Marcus and Sparrow in a private conference room at a nearby co-working hub, a converted warehouse buzzing with the energy of fledgling startups and determined innovators. Marcus, always the philosopher among us, looked out over the cityscape before speaking. Your father believed in the power of innovation to uplift communities. Today, that mantle rests on your shoulders. But remember, Jason, every action has consequences. While you expose this conspiracy, you must also shield those who believe in independent innovation. His words resonated as I glanced down at the beacon prototype displayed on my tablet, a symbol of my father's legacy and my own determination. Sparrow, usually reticent behind the glow of multiple screens, leaned forward. I dug deeper into Plan Delta last night, he said, his eyes fixed on lines of code streaming across his monitor. There's evidence that Elaine wasn't working alone. Inside these encrypted messages, I found references to a Phase 2 that implicates coordinated moves from within Silvernova's network. Brandon's role isn't as a minor accessory, but as a key orchestrator. He's been repackaging our innovations under a new guise to lure investors and suppress competitors. His revelation spiked the adrenaline coursing through me. This was no longer just about recovering stolen funds. It was about confronting a network designed to monopolize the industry by extinguishing the creative spirit that the beacon stood for. That afternoon, I retreated to my modest yet bustling workshop where the heart of my dream, the original beacon prototype, sat on a cluttered workbench. The machine was more than circuits and screens. It was an embodiment of my father's vision to light up dark corners with innovation and hope. I began drafting my presentation for the upcoming Austin Tech Forum. Every slide, every bullet point was a piece of my soul laid bare. I interwove the history of my father's legacy, the technical ingenuity behind the beacon, and the unfolding conspiracy that now threatened our entire community. I wanted to confront the betrayal head-on in front of the tech elite, my friends, supporters, and even those who had doubted me for too long, with the clarity of evidence and the strength of my convictions. As I meticulously assembled the narrative of our impending public reckoning, my phone buzzed insistently with messages from Olivia and Marcus. Olivia's text read, "Asset freeze in progress. But Jason, be cautious. There are signs that Elaine and Brandon are aware of our moves. They might attempt to sabotage your upcoming presentation." Marcus, ever the calming presence, replied with a simple yet laden message. "Stay true to your vision. The community is behind you." I shared these updates with Sparrow, who, between keystrokes and code, managed to relay additional findings. I've detected an attempt to breach our network security this morning. It's crude, but it indicates someone on their team is trying to compromise our data streams. I'm countering it now, but this is a reminder that our adversaries are not idling. The cyber offensive added a palpable sense of urgency to my preparations. The stakes were rising. Every new piece of evidence sharpened the focus of our counter-strategy. We decided to host a secure virtual briefing with key community leaders from the local tech ecosystem. In the dim glow of conference room screens, I presented the consolidated evidence, from the offshore transaction logs and encrypted correspondences to the tangible documents recovered from the Nexus hub. The room filled with murmurs of disbelief and determination. A young entrepreneur, eyes alight with fierce resolve, declared, "We won't let our innovation be hijacked. We'll stand with you, Jason, to preserve our integrity and our future." This support, emerging from a very community that once doubted the sanctity of independent dreams, galvanized me further. Late that evening, as I rehearsed my presentation one final time in front of the large mirror in my workshop, I reflected on the journey that had led me here. Memories of my father's steady guidance under starlit skies mingled with flashes of happier times before Elaine's betrayal. I recalled the late nights of debugging code, the excitement of each new breakthrough, and the belief that even the smallest spark of innovation could overcome the darkest of betrayals. In every crisis, I murmured to my reflection, there is an opportunity, a chance to reclaim what is rightfully ours. The beacon was not merely a project. It was a living testament to resilience, a symbol that in our collective struggle, the spirit of creativity would prevail. Then, as I emailed the final draft of my presentation to Olivia and scheduled a secure call with the tech community, my phone rang. The caller ID was unknown, and the line crackled with static. I answered hesitantly, and a distorted voice spoke. "Jason, you're pushing too close to the truth. Elaine is about to make her next move. You'd better be prepared, because what happens tonight will change everything." The line went dead abruptly, leaving behind a shadow of menace that hung in the silence. I stared at the phone, the words echoing in my mind like a death knell in a crowded hall. Was this a direct warning from Elaine, or had one of her hidden operatives just decided to escalate the threat? Heart pounding, I took a deep breath and reviewed the timeline on my laptop. The massive transfer Olivia had warned about was scheduled in less than 20 hours, and the Austin Tech Forum was rapidly approaching. Every second was now a precious commodity. I quickly coordinated with Olivia to ensure that all legal measures were tightened, while Marcus reassured the assembled allies that our collective strength would safeguard our cause. Sparrow's tireless efforts to lock down our systems had ensured no more breaches, at least for now. In that charged atmosphere, as neon signs flickered outside the workshop window and the hum of the city pulsed in the background, I realized that I was standing on the edge of a storm. The next move, whether it was a daring public confession or a strategic legal maneuver, would define not only my future, but the fate of every independent innovator fighting against the tide of coercive power. I couldn't shake the sense of looming confrontation. Threats from Elaine and Brandon had grown bolder, their machinations more desperate as they scrambled to retain control. And then, in the midst of it all, an unexpected knock reverberated through the quiet of my workshop, a knock so precise it seemed almost choreographed. My heart thundered as I edged toward the door, uncertain if it heralded an ally or the embodiment of the betrayal that had upended my life. I paused, hand on the doorknob, every instinct alert in that frozen moment. The future of the beacon, my father's legacy, and the very spirit of innovation hung precariously in the balance. Just as I braced myself to open the door and face whatever, or whoever, awaited me on the other side, my phone buzzed again with a message that sent a chill down my spine. "Your next step will decide everything. Are you ready?" The room fell silent. In that heartbeat, as darkness pressed at the edges of my vision, I realized that the confrontation I had been preparing for was imminent. And in that moment, with every secret unveiled and every ally united behind my cause, I wondered, would I finally expose the full horror of Elaine's conspiracy, or was this a final trap designed to shatter the last remnants of my hope? I took a determined breath, stepped toward the door, and prepared to face the storm head-on, unaware that the person waiting on the other side might just change the course of everything. I took a steadying breath as I moved toward the door of my workshop, still reeling from the ominous events of the past few days. The knock that had echoed in my mind the previous night now demanded resolution. With trembling hands, I grasped the cold metal knob and slowly swung the door open. Standing there in the dim light was Elaine, her expression a conflicted blend of guilt, regret, and resolute defiance. Behind her, half hidden in the shadows, stood Brandon. His presence confirmed the depth of the betrayal that had shattered my life and tainted my father's legacy. For a long, silent moment, our eyes met. Elaine's voice, barely a whisper, broke the tension. "Jason, I never intended for things to go so far. I thought I could fix it all before you found out." Her words, laced with a desperate plea for understanding, fell flat against the reality of her actions. Brandon said nothing, his face revealing nothing but a cold detachment. In that instant, I knew that any attempt at private reconciliation was futile. I gently closed the door, leaving them on the doorstep, and felt a surge of resolve course through me. This brief encounter was a final reminder of the calculated treachery that had upended my world. I immediately sent a terse message to Olivia. "The time has come. Prepare for the forum." Clutching the incriminating dossier, the Nexus Hub documents, the USB drive filled with decrypted files, and the detailed transaction logs, I prepared myself for the coming battle. The Austin Tech Forum loomed on the horizon as the ultimate stage for my public reckoning. That evening, I found myself in a vast, modern auditorium filled with the brightest minds and most influential figures in our tech community. The room hummed with anticipation as I stepped onto the stage, the soft glow of the Beacon prototype casting a gentle light behind me. I began my address, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Today, I stand before you not as a victim of betrayal, but as a custodian of truth and innovation," I declared, my words resonating throughout the hall. I recounted my journey, the promise of my father's legacy, the crushing blow of Elaine's deceit, and the sinister conspiracy known as Plan Delta that had threatened to hijack our entire industry. On the giant screen behind me, evidence came into sharp focus. Decrypted emails, offshore transaction records, and internal memos detailing Silver Nova Capital's complicity in funneling stolen funds to secure hostile takeovers. The audience sat in rapt silence as the gravity of the revelation sank in. Midway through my presentation, a murmur of unrest spread through the crowd. In the reserved section at the back, Elaine attempted to rise, her face twisted in a mixture of panic and defiance. "Jason, you don't understand. This wasn't meant to hurt you," she stammered, attempting to interject a counter-narrative. But as the slide changed to display irrefutable evidence of her dealings with Brandon and Silver Nova Capital, her protest faltered. Brandon, too, now visibly uneasy, sank further into his seat, unable to maintain the facade of control. At that moment, Olivia joined me on stage, her calm yet authoritative demeanor reinforcing the truth. "Legal actions have already been set in motion," she announced. "Authorities are investigating Silver Nova Capital, and we have secured injunctions to freeze the illicit transfers." Her words catalyzed a palpable shift in the room. Murmurs of disapproval for the conspirators grew louder, and the collective anger of the community swelled like a rising tide. Buoyed by the overwhelming support of my peers, I pressed on with renewed conviction. My father once told me, "In every shadow there is a spark of light waiting to be kindled." Today, that spark is all of us, innovators, thinkers, and dreamers united against corruption. We must rise above greed and manipulation, and together, we will ensure that our future is built on integrity and creativity. The crowd erupted into enthusiastic applause, their cheers a powerful affirmation of our shared values. As I scanned the audience, I saw faces lit with hope and determination. In that defining moment, it was clear that my fight was not just for personal vindication, but for the soul of our industry. Elaine's defiant posture began to crumble, replaced by a look of despair, while Brandon remained silent, a man stripped of his arrogance. The public exposure of Plan Delta marked a turning point. The conspirators had been unmasked, and the tech community's unity had come to the forefront. As the session concluded, the overwhelming applause and standing ovation signified a hard-won victory. Employees, entrepreneurs, and investors alike flocked to congratulate me, not solely for reclaiming my inheritance, but for defending the very essence of innovation against systemic betrayal. Later, in a quiet moment away from the fervor of the forum, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. I sipped a cup of coffee in a cozy downtown cafe, the early morning light casting long shadows across worn notebooks filled with my father's handwritten wisdom. I recalled his gentle admonition that true legacy is measured not by wealth, but by the courage to stand up for what is right. In that reflective solitude, I felt both the sting of past betrayals and the warmth of reclaiming my destiny. In the aftermath, the consequences for Elaine and Brandon were swift and unyielding. Their roles in the conspiracy were exposed to the full force of legal and public scrutiny, and Silvernova Capital's deceptive operations were dismantled through coordinated legal actions led by Olivia. That very evening, I recorded a final message to share on my YouTube channel. In the face of deception and betrayal, we discovered that integrity and community are our greatest weapons. What legacy would you fight for? Let this be a call to all who dare to dream and stand up for truth. Share your story, and let's inspire one another. Those words were not merely a conclusion to a turbulent chapter. They were an invitation for every viewer to reclaim their own power in the face of adversity, to be the spark that transforms darkness into light. As I published the video, I was overwhelmed by the supportive messages flooding in from around the world. In that electrifying moment, I knew our collective fight against corruption could kindle a revolution of integrity in the tech industry. Stepping out into the cool night air, I wandered the bustling streets of Austin, the neon lights merging with the gentle glow of a new dawn, and I felt a profound sense of vindication. The journey had been long and arduous, but every hardship had fortified my resolve. In that defining moment, as the neon lights of Austin merged with the gentle glow of a new dawn, I realized that every great obstacle harbors the seed of transformation. I had turned betrayal into a catalyst for change and discovered the unbreakable power of truth and community. What legacy would you fight for? Share your story below and let the light within us all shine brighter than the darkness. Our journey continues, fueled by hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief in a brighter tomorrow. Together, we triumph over darkness.